Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel with another great discussion on a topic near and dear to everyone's heart: customer experience, customer service, especially these days. Annette, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, thanks for joining us and sharing your perspective. We followed each other on social media for quite some time, so this is actually the first time we're actually speaking, which is always
Yeah.
fun with Twitter followers in particular. Um, but let's dive right in. Maybe introduce yourself and your work at CX Journey, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Thank you. This is my 30th year in this customer experience profession. I started my career at JD Power and Associates back in 1992. And it's so funny. People always ask me, well, how did you end up in this profession? And it's not a sexy story at all. It will date us is what it will do. It will, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm looking in the paper for a great job, and I found that. And it was, really was a great, um, it was a great opportunity, and here I am 30 years later, and really have spent a lot of the last 30 years running consulting services organizations for some of the major voice of the customer vendors, and then also had a couple of stints on the client side, especially with Fidelity and Mattel. And about 6 years ago, I went out on my own and really just work with clients, soup to nuts customer experience strategy, do a lot of speaking and content and that type of work. But my passion is really working with companies to help them improve the employee experience and the customer experience. So
Yeah, that's a great mission. And I dabble in the CX space, but more from the tech side. I'm more of a geek
yeah.
than a CX expert. But tell us, what's maybe start with what's right and what's wrong these days in CX. What are you seeing out there? Best case and worst case, because as
Yeah.
consumers we see it all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. It wasn't intentional, but about just before we jumped on the air, I had read a couple of articles that my aunt sent me of these incredible customer experience opportunities. Ironically, both of the articles had to do with experience in the travel industry from their customer service phone numbers, and they're doing everything on chat. So that's Frontier Airlines. That's made major news in the last week or so. And then the other one was a story about Southwest Airlines and how, people are saving seats for, their family and friends who are back in Group C, right? And they happen to be in Group A and have paid to get, on the, or have, checked in 24 hours in advance, right on the nose, and got into Group A. But just things like that. And Southwest Airlines not wanting to jump in and get in the middle of that. They don't have a policy about seat saving. So things like that. We're seeing a lot of companies, and this is right up your alley, right? Using technology, going back to the Frontier Airlines, using technology instead of that human interaction, where that's not what customers want. And
Mm.
that's a huge issue in a lot of situations when the customer experience isn't meeting customer needs. It's because somebody internally said, hey, we're going to do this our way. We think we know best, but ultimately what we what we're doing is what we think is best and not what we know is best, because we really have taken the time to understand our customers and deliver the experience that they expect. So that's a big part of what's wrong with the experience today, is that there's some executive or some idea floating around in the organization, and like, hey, let's do this, or hey, everybody else is doing this, we should be doing this. And it really isn't a good fit for the experience that customers are having with your brand, because you're different from Amazon, you're different from another industry, you're different from what customers expect from one industry to the next. So it's created a little bit of a mess out there.
Yeah, a mess to say the least. And there's such a big gap between those few leaders who do it right and are really good at scale in customer experience. I think of Apple, for example, who I ordered something the other day. It arrived in 2 hours, hand
Oh
delivered
wow.
to my home. Of course, they know everything about me, every device I own. When something breaks, it's just seamless. They literally just send you a new device. That's the high end. That's the expensive luxury kind of service that I guess an Apple can offer. But is it about tech? I mean, you talk a lot about culture.
Yeah.
How do you fix culture? Because that's kind of, if a culture's broken, that
Yeah.
just isn't about their customer experience, right?
Exactly. It's sort of the root of everything, right? And I'll just address your first point about tech. I always say that tech is it's not the experience. It's a tool that really facilitates or supports or helps deliver the experience, but it's not the experience itself, right? The experience itself is very much around the feelings and the emotions and the perceptions that a customer has about the interactions that they're having with the brand. So it's more of a human thing than it is a technology thing. So, but yeah, the culture is such an important piece because like I said, it's at the root of everything that we do. And if we have this culture that is one that is customer centric, one that is driven by, hey, we're putting the customer at the forefront, in the center of everything that we do. I define customer centricity as no discussions, no decisions, no designs without, really first without bringing the customer voice in, but then without really asking throughout all of that, how is this going to impact the customer? How's it going to make her feel? What problem does it solve? What value does it add? And a culture that is customer centric is one that is deliberately designed to be that way. It doesn't just happen by chance. And the leadership team, such an important piece of that, right? It can't happen without leaders committed to that type of a culture, that type of an organization, that type of a how we're going to run the business. And it can't just be the CEO, for example. It's got to be across the board because we need the entire organization, the culture for the entire organization to be customer centric. Otherwise, if it's not, then customers are interacting with different departments, different business units, different parts of the organization, and it feels like you're suddenly interacting with five different companies, right? So, really important that we set the culture, and there's a lot that goes into setting that culture. And at the heart, culture is core values plus behaviors. We set
Hmm.
our core values, and then we define the behaviors that are associated with it, and the unacceptable, acceptable, and unacceptable behaviors, so that employees know what that means to live and breathe those values. And that's really at the root of culture. So that was a lot there. Sorry.
No, it's really interesting because I, interact with so many different providers as do you. Let's take your telecom, your broadband company, your service provider, your gas company,
Yep.
and on and on and on. And you can tell there are just some organizations that just don't train and equip and
Yep.
upskill their staff. Either in person at a retail store or on the phone. And I feel, sort of empathetic with the person. They aren't given the tools, the knowledge, the authority to kind of help me in many ways. What else is kind of broken that needs fixing?
No, it's exactly that. And you bring up a great point. And you didn't say it in so many words, but I'll just, based on what you just said, employee experience drives the customer experience, and
Hmm.
employee experience has two parts to it. Say the soft side and the hard side, the soft stuff and the hard stuff, right? The soft stuff is all the things that we think about when you think about, hopefully think about employee experience, which is the, leadership that cares, and we're empowered, and we, know how we contribute, and we're valued, and we're supported, and all of that. But the hard stuff is the tools, the resources, the processes are not broken, the policies aren't outdated. And we see this all the time, that employees are expected to deliver that type of an experience, to deliver a great experience without having the tools. And that's not just technology, it is the training.
Hmm.
Yesterday, I'll give you a prime example. Yesterday I called my cellular provider because, for whatever reason, when I make a call here in my house, I can hear the other person, but the other person can't hear me.
Oh, that's a nice feature. Yeah.
Hey, I had a good laugh with the rep, because I was like, unless you're under 40, which I'm not, unless you're under 40, your phone really is only used for, apps and
Hmm.
texting. You don't really actually phone calls, whatever. But I actually do make phone calls with mine. And so, so here's the experience. And this really kind of takes into account a lot of the things we just talked about. I couldn't call from my phone, obviously, because they wouldn't have been able to hear me. But I ended up calling from my Google Voice on my computer, and I had to enter my cell phone number twice. So first of all, because I
Hmm.
wasn't on my phone, it probably, I don't know if the experience would have been different if I'd called from my phone. But so I had to enter the phone number twice in the IVR, and then when the first rep answered, he asked me for my phone number again. And I'm like, I actually said, "Are you kidding me? I've already entered it." And then he ended up transferring me because he couldn't answer it. And I thought, gosh, the things that I'm asking about, there should be some first level sort of, questions that he should be asking me, and things that he should be checking. And I thought, to your point, I felt bad for the guy because I thought, gosh, he could have done much more than he did, but he very quickly passed me off and escalated me to tier two. And it was like, wow. So I get to tier two, and the rep answers, and she goes, "Can I have your phone number?" And I thought, oh
Oh,
my gosh, did he just do a cold transfer? He didn't even do a warm transfer where
yeah.
she's got my number and my notes and who I am. And yeah, so, but that's training, that's having the right tools, all of that stuff that isn't happening within these organizations. And it's crazy because you think we've spent so much time. I mean, I've been doing this work for 30 years. I
Mm.
spent so much time, working on this stuff, and yet the experience really isn't better. It's not. As a matter of fact, I think it's gotten worse after the pandemic too. So,
Well, that's a great question because during the pandemic, there's
yeah,
been so much investment in digital adoption and transformation and new apps and new services. And on one hand, you can get food delivered at the push of a button, and you can get a
yeah,
telehealth appointment, and you can do all these things. But a lot of industries, I think of healthcare and banking, and they're as sort of stuck in the past as ever. Is this sort of a function of the industry, or you're an insider in many of these companies? What does it take to enact change
yeah.
meaningfully?
I think it's a little bit of both. I worked with an insurance company a couple of years ago, and they had just rolled out their app, and their app was really really just an extension of the website. The
Mm,
functionality was not what when you go to an app, you certainly have certain expectations about what you can do on the app versus what you can do on the website. And my expectations are higher for the app than they are for the website, right? And funny story, it happened to also be my insurance company, health insurance company, and I had a question, and I submitted the question through tried to submit it through the app, and the app sent me to the website. So I submitted it through the website, and then when they responded 2 days later, they sent me an email with a fax PDF attached to it, and I was like,
oh my goodness.
what just happened here? What just happened here? How is that even possible? So I do think it's the industry. I've talked to several folks, obviously, within the financial industry, and whether it's insurance or banking or whatever, and this whole notion of, fax machines, and why are we still faxing things? Well, we need to have a paper, we need to have a hard copy, we need this, and it's like, well, there are other ways to do that, and I do think we're not dealing that with airlines, we're not dealing with that in retail. I just think they're so set in their ways, and this is how we've always done things, and it's that change is hard, at least in some people's minds. And it's funny, I did a webinar yesterday, and it was around humanizing digital transformation,
Mm.
and we were talking specifically about the employee experience and the employees part in that digital transformation, right? And I said, when we think about the technology that we give to our employees, it has to be consumer grade. I mean, we can't employees don't want to work with fax machines either, right? They want to have something simple that it's an app or whatever it is, but it's the same stuff that when I walk through the office doors and I leave and go home, I'm on the same. It's the same stuff. Why are we working on this antiquated, primitive technology to do our jobs? And so that also translates to a poor customer experience because it's antiquated. But again,
Yeah, it's
for
such a great point. Now you have a couple books. One is called Built to Win, making the customer experience part of your company's DNA. Tell us more about this book. What's the thesis and some of the insights that you might share? Cliff notes form for viewers.
Yeah, no, this book was written specifically for leaders, right? I mean, anybody can read it, but the message is for leaders. What does it mean to be customer centric? Why is it important to be customer centric? And really, what I do throughout the book is I outline the 10 foundational principles of a customer centric organization, right? So it's, the culture is really at the root of it. The, leadership, commitment, and alignment. It's the employees and the employee experience that has to come first. And customer understanding is really at the root of that. Of customer centricity, because we need to bring that customer voice in, and so and there's people before profits, people before product, people before metric, and then there's others as well. So I go through those 10 and really explain what those are, what they mean, and how they ultimately contribute to deliberately designing this customer-centric culture. So it was written because I felt like I was seeing the word customer-centric used a lot, but I don't think people really understand what that means.
Do you have any favorite anecdotes of companies that are really getting it right? I mean, we all know Apple, and we have our favorite, maybe local vendors or providers that just do a fantastic job. But I imagine you see it all, good, bad, indifferent. Anyone's worth calling out. On the
Yeah,
positive side, we probably don't want to call out the negative ones, but
yeah. We could be here for days on that, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
throughout the book, I have a ton of different
Mm,
examples of companies that are doing it right. But I wanted to share. There's a company that I work with here in Orange County. It's a client of mine, and that we've been working together for the last 2 years, and they've implemented these principles, right, and really
mm,
have. And they're a tech company. They're a startup. They're probably about 5 years old, maybe 150 or so employees. But we've taken the time to implement these principles, and what a difference it's made in the business, and how they're winning customers and how they're keeping customers and things like that. And we started, at the beginning with the culture and those core values, and defining what's, acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so it's been a really interesting ride. It's fun to see the change. And, when I share that story, people always say, oh, well, it's easy for small companies to do that. And it's like, well, yeah, it is. And especially startups, they can, turn on a dime, those kinds of things. But it's not
mhm.
just for small companies. It's not just for medium companies. And it's, certainly any size company can do this. It's just a matter of, doing the work, and having that commitment from the top. So really important. But yeah, I give some great examples, and probably some unexpected ones, that they're examples of the different principles, like Guinness, that the beer company, the brewery. Um,
Okay. Well, no
they,
customer service required there. And I'm kidding. The product
they
serves itself, but I
right.
imagine, yes, they have a whole distribution channel and supply chain, I bet.
Yeah, but they are actually an example in the chapter about employee experience. So
Mhm.
that's a cool one. There's Heinz ketchup, there's Campbell soup, there's Starbucks, there's all these different examples, and if you look really hard, you will find them. But for the most part, you do have to look a little bit harder to find the great examples. So Adam Bank in the UK, Zappos is always a great example of a customer service
Yeah, yeah,
organization.
yeah, absolutely. And they have this sort of know your customer philosophy. It's
Yeah.
amazing how many businesses, big and small, I do business with who beyond an account number, they know nothing about me. And I appreciate if you're a consumer company, you can't like have a CRM of 80 million customers, but there has to be a way to apply data and insight and analysis to like the interactions I've had in the past, or maybe some knowledge of who I am and my past requirements. So
Yeah.
tell us about your business. You are a solo practitioner, kind of like myself, and you do speaking, consulting, writing. What else are you up to?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So started 6 years ago. It was, as we talked about before we came on the air, best decision ever. I'd been wanting to do this, and it really is fun to be able to do the work that you love to do, the projects that you want to, focus on. So that's really what I've been doing. I speaking, yep, absolutely do that. I do a lot of content work in terms of both writing and whether it's webinars or whatever. But I also, consult with clients. I've got several clients where we're working, either whether it's soup to nuts customer experience strategy, or we're focusing on a specific aspect of the work that needs to be done to understand customers. I've got a couple right now where we're focusing specifically on, journey mapping, and really understanding the experience today and designing the experience for tomorrow. So fun stuff like that. And I always say, people ask me, well, if you're, wrote 2 books, and you write and you speak, why do you keep consulting? And I'm like, well, first of all, I love it. That's why I went out on my own, because this is the work that I love to do. And second of all, without that, I go on stage and I'm just up there talking out of the
Theory. Yeah. Yeah.
theory, right? But no, I'm in the weeds with my clients doing this work, and that's what I talk about. So
That's awesome. And you're also a very active social media person. That's how we connected. And, all the downsides of social, of course, which there are many, there's so many great upsides in terms of connecting and networking and finding clients
yeah,
and building community. And yeah, it's great to be connected. Thanks so much for, being a LinkedIn and Twitter connection. And anything you're looking forward to up through the holidays into the early new year? You're in the OC, so every day is paradise. But and anything in particular you're looking forward to besides more sunshine?
more sunshine. Yeah, we've actually had a couple of rainy days on and off.
Oh, my tiny violin playing here in Boston, where it's like 35 right now. So,
It was
but yeah,
so
I
I grew up in Ohio, right? So I have on my weather
oh,
app,
okay.
and my parents are still there. So on my weather app, I've got, my location and then my parents' location. And the last couple of mornings, I've sent them snapshots of the weather app saying, "Hey, we have the same temperature." But of course, it's 3 hours ahead. They're already the sun's been shining.
Yeah, of course, it's midnight there or something. Yes, well, really great to chat. We'll look forward to, your content and tweets and
Thank
posts
you.
and additional books. And yeah, good luck. Have a great holiday as well.
Thank you. You too. You too. Thanks for having
All
me.
right, Annette. Thanks so much.